Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. My must-get targets for this Michigan program on the recruiting trail. And personally, as a Michigan fan, this has been one of the most exciting off seasons for this Michigan program. We've looked at Sherrone Moore take over this program and just kind of take it up a notch on the recruiting trail. And I think a lot of fans were kind of waiting for this. You look at this Michigan program, we've talked extensively about this in the comments section. This is a program that not only one of the premier programs in all of college football, defending national champions, back-to-back Big Ten championships, pumping out a ton of talent into the NFL. I think we look at this program and say it should be one of the top programs on the recruiting trail every single cycle. And I think over the last couple of weeks, we've seen Michigan kind of realize that potential on the recruiting trail. Want to get into my favorite targets that Michigan is going after in this 2025 cycle. We ran this one about 2 months ago before the official visit weekend season, if you will. Coming out of June, all the official visit weekends kind of wrapping up. You kind of have a little bit more of a clear picture in terms of the top priorities for Michigan on the recruiting trail. Want to get into my favorite names. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Michigan fans. We've had a blast talking this program on the recruiting trail. I can't thank you guys enough for rocking with it. If you all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly for the Michigan fans, and one of my favorite reasons to be doing this, I learned a ton from you guys in the comment section. I'm going to give you guys my favorite prospects. If you have some diamonds in the rough that you really like on the recruiting trail, throw them in the comment section. We'll talk about them over the next couple of days and weeks. I learned a ton from you guys. I love chopping it up with you guys in the comment section. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with my number one target, and that's wide receiver Andrew Marsh, top 100 national prospect, one of the best wide receivers in this 2025 cycle. And the more film I watch of Andrew Marsh, the more I'm saying this kid's probably going to be the most talented wide receiver Michigan would have in this program, probably since Donovan Peoples-Jones. And you look at Andrew Marsh, and I think what kind of separates Andrew Marsh is how smooth he is. I mean, he's not necessarily the biggest frame. He's not the fastest wide receiver in this 2025 class. But what separates Andrew Marsh is this is a kid that you can get involved in so many different ways in an offense. And you look at all the successful wide receivers, not only at the college level, but the NFL level, that might be the most important trait. Just being a polished route runner that can create separation with a very diverse set of routes. And then a guy that after the catch, he's dynamite. I mean, he is so good at making people miss in space. He can win vertically. There's really not much that Andrew Marsh cannot do as a wide receiver. And I think for Michigan fans, we've been kind of banging the table to have that true wide receiver one in this Michigan offense. I look at Andrew Marsh and say he certainly could be that guy in this Michigan offense. And I think what Michigan is selling to Andrew Marsh, keep in mind, every Power 5 program in the country is after Andrew Marsh. If you're Michigan, what you're selling Andrew Marsh is you're a guy that can come in as a true freshman and play a lot of football for this Michigan program. I think he'd be the most talented wide receiver on this roster if he does end up in Ann Arbor. Hey, we've been banging the table for difference makers at the wide receiver position. Andrew Marsh would be that guy, and I think that kind of shows you the aggression that Sherrone Moore, this Michigan staff, is having on the recruiting trail. I mean, going to the state of Texas for one of the top wide receivers in 2025 and kind of making some serious headway. And from what it sounds like, Michigan probably the leader in the clubhouse for the commitment of Andrew Marsh. That's probably been the most exciting development over the last couple of weeks for Michigan on the recruiting trail. My number two player, and I want to go to the tight end position. The Michigan fans who've been rocking with the fellas, Andrew Oish, he's my guy. I think this kid can be such a difference maker at the tight end position. You look at how Michigan uses their tight ends. It's no secret. It's one of the most important positions to this Michigan offense, and that's a stark difference from a lot of Power 5 programs across the country who don't really utilize tight ends. I think what you're selling Andrew Oish is, hey, the Michigan offense, it runs through pass-catching tight ends. Andrew Oish, at least in my mind, is one of, if not the best pure pass-catching tight end that you see in this 2025 cycle. Yes, you need to get some weight on him. This kid has the frame to put on the weight, but I just think he's a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses, a guy that has a massive catch radius that can control the middle of the field, but he runs routes like a wide receiver. Like I really struggled to see, how do you deal with the guy like Andrew Oish? You want to put a defensive back on him. He's 6'5", going to be 230 pounds. You want to put a linebacker on him. He's going to route linebackers up. I think this is a difference maker at the tight end position. If you asked me the two guys that I would love to see commit to Michigan in this 2025 cycle, Andrew Oish, Andrew Marsh. Next guy on the list, and a guy that you guys threw me a bone with this one because he wasn't – I was kind of Michael Carroll was one of my favorite targets for Michigan. He commits to Alabama. A couple of you guys threw out Hardy Watts in the comment section. Have been working through his film the last couple of weeks. Love this kid. And what I love most about Hardy Watts is he is so polished at the offensive line position. I mean, you turn on the tape and say, this kid looks like he's been with the college football program for multiple years. I mean, the combo blocks, the double teams, working up to the second level, really nice feet and pass protection. He is an elite athlete for a 6'6", 290-pound frame. He plays lacrosse. It certainly makes sense. I mean, the footwork that Hardy Watts has is kind of on another level. I think another thing that I really like about Hardy Watts and something that's important to this Michigan offensive line is the versatility. He plays right tackle at the high school level. I think a lot of scouts and a lot of personnel departments see Hardy Watts as an interior offensive lineman at the collegiate level. Now, that might be his best position at the collegiate level. I look at him and say he could certainly play tackle. I mean, he's kind of a next level athlete for 6'6", 290-pound frame. He has that ideal frame. He's a really good athlete. I look at Hardy Watts and say he could play guard, but I also think he could play tackle at a very high level for Michigan, and we rely on versatility on the offensive line. Another guy that's just really interesting on the offensive line, I threw him in there, Andrew Babala. Now, it sounds like Stanford is probably the leader in the clubhouse, but if you kind of read through the tea leaves, it's probably Michigan that's number 2. I think Michigan has a massive opportunity to let an offensive tackle that's kind of a different kind of player than Hardy Watts. You look at Hardy Watts and say, the floor is so high for this kid. He's going to be so solid. He's already such a solid offensive lineman. You watch Andrew Babala and say, he's a good football player right now. Don't get me wrong, but the sky's the limit for Andrew Babala. The ceiling is a top 5 NFL draft pick. He's a freaky athlete with freaky length at that offensive tackle position, just not that polished of an offensive lineman yet. And I think that's what makes him such an interesting target for Michigan is you look at the development that Michigan has had on the offensive line. This kid, to me, it just seems like a no-brainer for Andrew Babala to come to Michigan. You have all the talent in the world. If you get developed, I think you're a top 5 NFL draft pick. What better place to go than to a program that has shown that they are probably the best program in the country at developing offensive linemen? I think this one makes a ton of sense. You look at some of the connections. Sherrone Moore, probably going to be the leader on this recruitment. He's from the state of Kansas. This one makes a lot of sense. It doesn't sound like Michigan's trending for Andrew Babala, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised if you kind of fast forward over the next couple of weeks and months and say Michigan is not going to give up on a guy like Andrew Babala. I think the second thing is you look at Stanford and say they're going to the ACC. They're projected to win 2.5 games on DraftKings. What happens if Stanford goes 2-10 and Andrew Babala might be committed to Stanford, but come national signing day, he's trying to decide where he wants to go. You want to go to a Stanford program that is probably a doormat in the ACC, at least right now, probably the worst team in the ACC. Not a shot at Stanford. It's just I think that could represent an opportunity for Michigan to get back into this one. Whether he commits to Stanford during this summer, I would be surprised if Michigan gives up on a guy like Andrew Babala. Now, going to the defensive side of the football, I want to talk about 2 players. One, Nathaniel Auu, freak show linebacker. I mean, this is one of the fastest, most athletic linebackers that you're going to see in the 2025 cycle. We've already shown that we are prioritizing linebackers that can operate in space. I think with some of these new teams coming into the Big Ten, I think having athletic linebackers that can operate in space is at a premium. I don't know if there's many better linebackers in space than Nathan Auu. That name gives me trouble every single time. This kid just flies around the football. He'll play the overhang linebacker spot. He'll play the traditional off-ball linebacker spot. He'll blitz off the edge. He's extremely versatile. He operates in space exceptionally well. He closes the distance between himself and the ball carrier at such a high rate. I think this kid is a stud linebacker, and it sounds like Michigan certainly has a really good shot at Nathaniel. Last guy I want to talk about, and one of my favorite prospects, I probably should have led with Shamari Earls, committed to South Carolina. Yeah, it sounds like this is going to come down between Michigan and Georgia. What's interesting about Shamari Earls, I watched the film and say I almost like him better at wide receiver. And he's a guy that plays both ways. The physical traits are off the charts, right? 6'2", 180. He looks like he's probably closer to 200 pounds, a ton of length in the arms. Take a look at the track background, runs a 10.8 in the 100-meter dash. This kid absolutely cooks. And then the movement skills. And this is kind of what makes me want to think he could play wide receiver as well. When he has a football in his hands, there's not many more elusive wide receivers than a guy like Shamari Earls. Yes, he could be a very good cornerback. I think he could be an elite wide receiver and the Big Ten level as well. Shamari Earls, another name to monitor. Again, Georgia, Michigan, sounds like those two teams are the ones really treading to flip Shamari Earls. I absolutely love this kid. Think he could be a lockdown cornerback. Think he could be an elite wide receiver. Those are my favorite names that Michigan seems to be going after the most post-official visit month, I guess, visit weekend season after the month of June. A lot of these guys scheduled to commit over the next couple of weeks. We'll break them down as they come in. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. A lot of Michigan recruiting talk over the next couple of weeks. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.